Ever tried planning a trip with a group of friends? Everyone got different budgets, must-see spots, and of course, those picky eaters. It's a headache.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, what if an AI could solve that perfectly? Like, seriously. No more arguments over where to eat or what to see. That's what we're diving into today.
Sounds right up my alley.
We're looking at some cutting-edge research on how to make large language models, those LLMs we always hear about. Even better at cracking tough problems like planning the ultimate group trip. I'm excited to unpack this, but before we go full-on travel agent, could you quickly explain what LLMs are? For those who might not be AI experts.
Of course. Think of it like this. Picture your typical chatbot, but way smarter, like light years ahead.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
These LLMs are trained on tons and tons of data, which lets them do things like write different kinds of creative text, even translate languages, just like that.
So it's not just about spitting out words anymore, it's about actual thinking, problem solving.
You got it. This research is all about pushing those boundaries, making LMs think deeper, be better problem solvers.
That's the goal, right? Figure out how to get these LLMs to solve problems that even we humans struggle with. What's the secret sauce? What makes this research so different?
The key is how they use something called inference time compute. It's not just about the size of the model, but how much brain power it can use while it's thinking.
So it's like giving the LLM extra brain power on demand right when it needs it.
Exactly. And the more it have access to, the better it can reason through complex stuff. Now, there have always been other ways to help LLM solve problems. There's best of N, where the model just throws out a bunch of solutions.
You pick the least terrible one.
Pretty much, yeah. But it's not exactly elegant, more like throwing darts and hoping for the best.
Not a very targeted approach.
Then there's sequential revision, where it keeps refining one solution based on feedback, kind of like editing a draft.
Okay, so those are the usual suspects, but they've got their limits. What makes this mind evolution thing different?
Mind evolution. Well, it's a whole different ballgame. Imagine survival of the fittest, but for ideas. It's an evolutionary search strategy, not straight from nature, but inspired by it.
I like where this is going. So you're saying these solutions are, like, competing? Tell me more.
It starts with the LLM coming up with a bunch of possible solutions. Then they're judged on how well they solve the problem. The best ones get to, well, not exactly reproduce, but they're combined, their best parts mixed and matched to create even better solutions.
This is wild, but it also sounds insanely complex. How do they even test this? Did they really make LLMs plan trips to Disney World?
Not Disney World, no. But they did make these clever benchmarks that are, surprisingly, things we deal with all the time. One is called Travel Planner. The LLM has to plan a trip, but it has to consider things like budget, places you absolutely have to see, what kind of hotels you like, and even your food preferences.
Oof, that one's personal. I feel that struggle. Planning a trip with a ton of restrictions is definitely not my idea of fun. What other benchmarks did they use?
Another one is Trip Planning from Natural Plan. This time, it's all about figuring out flights, the best route to visit multiple cities, and you've got limited time.
So trying to squeeze in all the best spots in Europe in just 2 weeks without going broke.
Exactly. And then there's Meeting Planning from Natural Plan, which, let's be honest, is just as much of a nightmare.
Oh, I know it. Just getting a few friends to agree on a dinner spot can be a mission impossible.
Yeah.
So did it work? Did this mind evolution actually plan these crazy trips and get everyone to those meetings on time?
It did, and the results were pretty impressive. Mind evolution really blew the other methods out of the water on all 3 tasks.
So we're talking a major improvement, not just a little boost.
Oh yeah, it's a game changer. Using the Gemini 1.5 Flash model, they got a success rate over 95% for that tricky travel planner, over 94% for trip planning, and even over 83% for the dreaded meeting planning.
Wow, those are some seriously good numbers. It sounds like mind evolution is a master at juggling all those constraints.
It is, and get this, the researchers didn't just stop there. They even tried a 2-stage approach, where they brought in a more powerful model, Gemini 1.5 Pro, to handle the problems that the Flash model couldn't quite crack.
So like calling in the big guns when things get really tough.
Exactly. And with this tag team approach, those success rates skyrocketed. They hit 100% for travel planner, 99.6% for trip planning, and over 98% for meeting planning.
That's mind-blowing. It seems like this 2-stage approach could be a real game changer. You get the power of the advanced model when you absolutely need it, but you're not constantly using it, so it's more efficient.
Exactly. A clever way to balance things out.
Okay, so we've established that mind evolution is great at planning trips and meetings, but I'm still kind of stuck on how this whole evolution thing actually works. You said it's based on biological evolution, survival of the fittest. But how does that translate to making LLMs better at solving problems?
It's pretty ingenious, actually. It's something called a language-based genetic algorithm.
Now, you mentioned language-based genetic algorithm earlier.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't, AI whizzes, could you explain that in simpler terms?
Of course. Think of it as a bunch of candidate solutions, all written out as text. Each solution is like an organism competing to be the best at solving the problem. Just like in nature, the fittest solutions survive and, well, not exactly reproduce, but they get to combine their best traits to make even better solutions.
Got it. So it's like a competition of ideas, but
Mhm.
how do these solutions actually evolve and get better over time?
There are a few key mechanisms at play here. First, there's this fitness function, which is kind of like a judge, evaluating each solution based on how well it tackles the problem.
Like a talent show judge, giving feedback after each performance.
Precisely. The fitness function assigns a score and even gives specific feedback on what's working and what's not. It's a constructive criticism for the LLM.
Okay, so it's constantly being critiqued and improved upon. But with so many solutions being generated and judged, wouldn't it become chaotic? Like, how do they keep things organized?
That's where the island model comes in. It's all about maintaining diversity and preventing the process from getting stuck. They have these multiple isolated groups of solutions, each evolving independently.
So, like those remote islands where you get these unique species because they're not influenced by the mainland.
That's a great analogy. These islands allow for a wider range of possibilities to be explored. And to keep things fresh, there's also migration. Top-performing solutions from one island are sent to another periodically.
Like a student exchange program for the best and brightest ideas.
Exactly. And to make sure all the islands are pulling their weight, there's even an island reset. If an island isn't doing so well, it's replaced with top performers from the global pool.
So it's a pretty intricate system with lots of checks and balances to make sure the best ideas are constantly being refined and shared.
You got it. And it goes even deeper than that. They actually use the LLM to drive the selection, crossover, and mutation operations.
Hold on, break those down for me.
Well,
What do those terms mean in this context?
so selection is like choosing which solutions get to, well, not exactly reproduce, but pass on their traits to the next generation. They use something called Boltzmann tournament selection, which means that solutions with better fitness scores have a higher chance of being chosen as parents, but even those with lower scores get a tiny chance just to maintain diversity.
So it's not all about just picking the winners every time.
Right. Then there's crossover, where they actually combine the ideas. The LLM takes a look at multiple high-performing solutions, figures out their strengths, and merges them to create a new child solution that might inherit the best of both worlds.
It's like taking the best parts of two different trip itineraries and making the ultimate travel plan.
Exactly. And lastly, there's mutation, where they introduce random variations just to shake things up and prevent the evolution process from getting stuck in a rut.
A bit of controlled chaos.
Exactly. Small, controlled changes that could lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
So we have selection, crossover, and mutation, all driven by the LLM. It sounds like mind evolution is this intricate dance between order and chaos.
It really is, and it's this complex interplay of mechanisms that lets LLMs explore a huge range of solutions and ultimately come up with answers that are both creative and effective.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm still curious about that StegPoet benchmark you mentioned earlier. It sounded like something straight out of a spy movie.
StegPoet is definitely one of the more interesting ones. It's all about hiding secret messages in creative writing, things like poems or essays.
Wait, so the LLM is writing a poem that secretly contains a hidden message.
Exactly. And it can't just sound like a bunch of random words. It has to actually be good, stylistically sound, like a human wrote it.
That sounds incredibly challenging.
Mhm.
How did mind evolution handle that?
It did surprisingly well. Even with the added challenge of the hidden message, Mind Evolution, using that two-stage approach, was able to solve over 87% of the StegPoet problems.
So not only can these LLMs plan trips and schedule meetings, but they can also be secret agents.
It seems so. And that opens up some really interesting questions about what this technology can do.
Absolutely. Okay, we've talked a lot about the mechanics of mind evolution and how it performed on these tasks, but let's take a step back. Why should our listener care about all of this? What's the bigger picture?
That's the important question, right? What does this research actually mean?
Right. What are the implications of all of this? What does this mean for the future of LLMs?
Well, if we can already get LLMs to plan trips, schedule meetings, and even hide secret messages, Who knows what other things they'll be able to do in the future, things we might think are impossible right now.
It's true. We might be just scratching the surface of what these models are capable of.
Exactly. And that leads to the question, how will this technology change things for us, for our world?
That's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's important to remember that at the end of the day, these LLMs are tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or for bad.
So it's not just about the technology. It's about how we use it.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to make sure it's developed and used in a way that benefits humanity.
Absolutely. We need to be having these conversations now before this technology becomes even more powerful.
I couldn't agree more. The ethical side of AI is something we need to be thinking about very carefully.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What are the next steps for researchers in this field?
One promising area is developing even more advanced fitness functions. Remember, the fitness function is the guide for the whole evolution process. The better the fitness function, the better the solutions.
So it's not just about improving the LLMs, it's about improving how we train and direct them.
Exactly. And I think we'll see a lot more work on making these techniques more efficient and scalable. Right now, mind evolution needs a ton of computational power, but as technology gets better, these techniques should become more accessible.
That would be fantastic. More people would be able to use and benefit from this technology.
It would. And that could lead to a whole wave of new innovations and progress.
This has been a really incredible deep dive. We've learned so much about mind evolution, this totally new way of thinking about LLM problem solving, and we've even touched on some of the bigger implications for the future. Any final thoughts for our listener?
Just this. Keep learning, keep exploring, and stay curious. The world of AI is constantly changing, and it's an exciting time to be a part of it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. This is the deep dive signing off. Okay, so we've seen mind evolution in action, planning trips, scheduling those crazy meetings, even writing poems with hidden messages. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it really pushes the boundaries of what we thought LLMs could do.
But let's zoom out for a second. What does this all actually mean? What are the bigger implications of this research?
That's where it gets really interesting. If we can already get LLMs to do all that, what's next? What other problems, things we think are impossible, could they solve?
It's true. We might just be seeing the tip of the iceberg here.
Right, and it makes you wonder, how will this impact us? How will this change the world as we know it?
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, but we have to remember, these LLMs, they're tools. And just like any tool, they can be used for good or for bad.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's how we choose to use it.
Exactly. We have to make sure it's developed and used in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
That's a crucial point.
Uh-huh.
We need to be having these conversations now before this technology becomes even more powerful.
Absolutely. The ethical side of AI, that's something we need to be really careful about.
So what's next?
Uh-huh.
What are the big questions for researchers in this field?
I think a big focus will be on developing even more sophisticated fitness functions. Remember, those are the guides for the whole evolution process. The better the guide, the better the solutions.
So it's not just about making the LLMs better, it's about teaching them better.
Exactly. And I think we'll see a lot more work on making these techniques more, user-friendly and efficient. Right now, mind evolution needs a ton of power, but as technology improves, it should become more accessible to everyone.
That would be amazing. Imagine what people could do if this technology was available to everyone.
The possibilities are endless. It could lead to so much innovation and progress.
Well, this has been a mind-blowing deep dive. We've learned so much about mind evolution, this incredible new way of thinking about LLMs and problem solving, and we've even touched on some of the bigger questions for the future. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Keep learning, keep asking questions, and most importantly, stay curious. The world of AI is always changing, and it's a thrilling time to be a part of it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.